Hi, welcome to Empower Her. I have a very special guest with me today. Hi, Angeline. How are you?
Hi, Priya. I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Amazing. I invited Angeline here because she is an expert in customer success and revenue growth, and she's a leader, she's an entrepreneur, she's a mother of two. And I wanted to have you here because, you have so much knowledge and information to share with other women that it would be it would be a disservice to not invite you on a podcast where I basically invite women leaders to inspire other women, uplift other women, and basically share their own experiences, their challenges, their journeys. So that's why I invited you to this podcast. And I want to talk to you about different topics ranging from customer success to revenue growth to you being a mother, balancing work and life. And hopefully, our audience can learn from it. So let's start with a quick introduction. So if you can just quickly introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Angeline Gavino. I'm currently the Vice President of Customer Success at Catalan. I also am a customer success coach. I work typically with customer success leaders who own a revenue number. I coach and empower them to confidently lead high performing customer success teams, build an effective customer success operating model that drives revenue, and also help them communicate the impact of customer success. I've maybe a little bit about how I got into customer success. I've been doing customer success for more than 14 years now. And back then, the customer success managers as a title wasn't even as mainstream. It was called something different back then. I wasn't a customer success manager back then, but definitely like the title. I mean, but I was definitely doing what, how we define customer success today.
Yeah.
And I started as an individual contributor. I moved up to managing teams, and I moved I moved horizontally, we should say, like laterally to other departments. I moved um, up and down as well. I
Mm.
went from being, like I said, individual contributor, manager, and actually went back to individual contributor again and manager, and then eventually leading customer success teams, like the whole department, including typically other client-facing teams like managed services and support. So as I mentioned today, I lead customer success at Catalan. It's a SaaS company. I typically work with B2B SaaS companies,
Mm.
and I enjoy what I do because I like working with people, and customer success is all about working with people, working with your customers, working with your team, working with other departments as well. Yeah,
Mm.
that's a little bit about
Yeah,
me.
yeah. Yeah, that was an amazing intro. And so let's start with obviously customer success. So from your perspective, how would you define, customer success, or what does customer success mean to you?
Okay, that's a very thought-provoking question because I think we customer success has evolved so much and
Mhm.
has been defined differently throughout the years. But at the base of it, for me, customer success is all about empowering your customers to achieve the goals they have set when they bought your product or service, and that is the mission. The number one mission you
Mm.
must have as a customer success is to serve your customers. But then, as I mentioned, having the lens of somebody who has built customer success teams, there is also that other side, which is how do you define customer success within your organization, right? And
Mm.
for me, customer success within in the lens of the organization is all about how do you let's expand what I said earlier. How do you empower your customers to achieve their goals when they bought
Mm.
or when they purchase their product and service, and at the same time be able to create, how should I say, be able to sustain revenue or create scalable ways to extract revenue from those existing customers because you're empowering them to succeed and um,
Mhm.
succeed in your product or your service. I guess,
Mhm.
like I said, there's two ways that I see it: my mission to my customers, and how do you see that as a revenue driver or growth driver within your organization? Because at the end of the day, business companies are businesses, right? And so
Yeah.
this is where I believe that customer success is positioned to really provide that sustainable and scalable way of growing your company. So that's how I would define. It's not this is a bit of a long-winded answer, but like I said, I like how you
Hmm.
like jumped on that. And
Yeah.
at 8 a.m. the morning, my brain was like, okay, that's a very nice question to
Yeah,
ask.
yeah, yeah. It is kind of like a complex question because I mean, I guess as you said, you're correct that, obviously it has evolved so much, and that's why, I asked that question because, you're right, when 10, 15, 20 years back, we did have customer success. It was just very different. It was seen in a very different way. I don't think it was seen as kind of like a revenue driver. It was just seen more like, in an operational way, like, okay, it's operations and it's like, more of like admin work, that kind of a thing. It wasn't really seen as like something, you can grow revenue with. Whereas, now people are starting to recognize that, okay, this is something that maybe we're ignoring that shouldn't be ignored now. And, companies should be paying attention to this. And so now, and, I am seeing a lot of companies starting to pay more attention to it. And that's why we now have like separate customer success departments, which didn't even exist, years ago. So that's why I was curious, like, what was your perspective on it? So, yeah, great answer. And so my next question um, is, you know, uh, I see a lot of metrics. There's so many KPIs when it comes to customer success. Some people have like NDR. Some people say there's NRR to measure it. Some people, say, okay, we should pay attention to maybe like CSAT or NPS. So many metrics floating around, I guess.
Mhm.
So my question to you is, what do you think are the most important metrics that you would pay attention to?
Okay. I think it ties back to my answer earlier, right? Like customer success, there is always that perspective where you look out for what's best for the customer, but there's also that organizational perspective and what role customer success plays within the organization. So I being a customer success leader that actually has been leading teams that drive revenue, my first response would always be it should be tied to your business metrics, right? So for me, that means, like you said, either NDR or NRR, basically net revenue retention, which
Mm,
typically is a calculation of how effective you are at retaining your customers, but then also expanding the revenue from your existing customers.
mm,
And in different stages of company growth, that could be maybe they're focusing on retention. So typically at the beginning, it would might be all about GRR or gross revenue retention. And then as your team, if you want to measure the effectiveness of your team, also expanding the revenue from your installed base, then that's when you start looking at NRR. I typically think that having looking at those two is a great balance when you're looking at
mm,
business metrics. But at the end of the day, for me, metrics or KPIs really is all about. Um, I can say that and say, okay, that's what you should measure. But like I said,
mm,
everyone goes through a different journey within their
mm,
organization. And so for me, it ties back to how do you really define metrics and KPIs? And for me, it's all about what kind of behavior do you want to drive within your customer success organization so
mm,
that, they remain true to their mission, and they are able to achieve,
mm.
what is the charter of your CS organization. And
Yeah.
so in some organizations, maybe it's not driving revenue is not their primary
Mm.
goal. But
Yeah,
I
that's
always,
true.
always Yeah, and I would always, whatever your goal is, I think as a customer success leader, you're doing your team a disservice if you're not highlighting the revenue impact of what your team is doing, right? Because, like I said, at the end of the day, no matter how you define that in your organization, customer success is really about driving revenue as well for your organization. And so, even if you
Mm,
don't own a revenue number, you still need to be able to highlight the impact of your team. And so, I will always say, always tie it back to your business metrics. But then, like I said, it's also about driving the right behavior within your CS teams. And what
mm,
is it that you want? Is it, do you want them to drive engagement within their accounts? Do you want them to drive
mm,
adoption? So depending on what
mm.
those are, you should
Yeah.
also look into that, because
Mm,
you're looking at operational metrics, and you're looking at business metrics. And basically, I believe that business metrics are typically lagging metrics, lagging indicators. And so having those operational metrics that are leading indicators to help you understand, are you on track to really achieve those like business metrics, I think is a good way to do it. So
mm.
my answer, my short answer to your question is it depends, with some,
Mm,
inputs about what I believe they should look at, which is like
mm,
business metrics, operational metrics, which is a
mhm.
good balance of leading and lagging indicators. There you go.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Yeah, I think that's kind of like sometimes we forget that okay, that alignment of your goals, your team goals should be aligned with like what the company wants, what the organization needs. As you're right. So it could be like they might be looking to drive more engagement. So the focus might change from time to time. Even 1 year maybe you're focusing on the engagement. The next year your goal could be completely different from that. So yeah, yeah, I think that was the answer to that question. So um I would say that obviously you mentioned a little bit about how you moved up in your career to now your position. But were there any specific pivotal moments that you think has shaped your career in any way?
Hmm. I like that question, because I can specifically point to that particular
Oh,
event
nice,
in my life.
amazing.
Actually,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
when I moved from working at a multinational company with like 50,000 employees to working at a startup. And
Mm,
like I said, I've in that bigger, larger organization, I have been doing a flavor of customer success already. But when I move into a startup where I actually need to help build the processes, scale the processes, that's where I realized that first I want to deliberately stay within the customer success profession,
mm,
because prior to like my early years is actually a combination of, like I told you earlier, I was an individual contributor, and then
mm,
managing teams, and individual contributor again. I actually liked to experiment I experimented a lot, basically the early stage of my career, and I was always willing to jump from one role to the other. I actually
mm,
started as customer support, and then
mm,
I moved into an operations role. And then
mm,
I moved into a client facing role,
mm,
where, like I said, like a flavor of customer success. And I
mm,
already, from there, and then I had some sales experience as well. So I knew at some point in looking at all of those variety of roles, and what I get, the knowledge that I got that I gained from working on these different roles, allowed me to really later on in my career figure out the path that I wanted to take moving forward. In the moment
mm,
that that clicked to me, it was a deliberate, because I believe that career like growing as a profession, is a deliberate path, just like in anything, just like
mm,
in customer success as well, right? There is framework, strategy. The moment that clicked with me that, okay, customer success is the path that I wanted to take, I deliberately took steps to really grow in that profession and to get where I
mm,
want to be. And I think the moment that I did that, is when I carved the path to move up the ladder, because I said, okay, this is,
Mm,
I think, where I'm going to stay. So, like
mm,
I said, that shift from working to a multinational company into the startup is really that catalyst, because the moment that I worked at a startup, like, it's different vibe, different energy, right? And I really felt the contribution that I have. Um, to the organization, and that's what
mm,
really fueled and empowered me to like really just pursue it. Obviously, on top of, we in customer success, we love dealing with people, we love working with customers. I what I really like about that is no one day is different. You can be talking to one customer who has this particular set of problems, and you may be talking to another customer with from a different industry, a different set of problems. So you need to be very
mm,
scrappy in customer success. You need to be able to um, pivot, and I like
mm.
that, that sense of there's always something new. That's what excites me. So that was one of the, I think, the pivotal change, at least when it comes to me deciding the path that I wanted to take moving forward.
So, I was reading a book where, it was talking about, there's a lot of traits a lot of women, have in common. And, one of the traits that a lot of women struggle with is confidence, self-confidence. And um, I wanted to ask what, gave you that confidence that, oh, like then, you were like, okay, I'm an individual contributor or, whatever, but now I'm going to pursue this path in customer success and, I'm going to move up the ladder. What gave you that confidence in yourself?
Oh, wow. You know, confidence, I don't have confidence all the time. I am going to
Yeah.
be honest. I think women in particular struggle a lot with imposter syndrome, several in different moments of their career, and I still do, even where I am right now, even after years of experience in doing this, where you would feel like, okay, I think I know it all, but the reality is also the profession is evolving, and so I know that I will never know anything, and I'm always, that's why for me, my mindset has always been just learn and grow. And you may not know the answers all the time, but it's all about acknowledging that and then actually taking steps to find the answers if you didn't know the answer to begin with. So the confidence really comes in a lot of, in the systems that I have around me. First off, I always know how to how should I say, self motivate. I I wouldn't say it's easy for me to change my mindset, but typically I always get um, try to get out of a situation and try to look at it at like different angles for me to like say, okay, to just be a bit more objective, and that gives me confidence that I'll be able to tackle any head on, so long as I always keep that mindset of openness and willing to learn, because like I said, I will never know anything. So so long as I acknowledge that and know the path that I could take, that is okay to make mistakes, then that's fine. But then also, like I said, the system around me, I've always joined organizations where which how should I say that, which to which their goals relates to mine, like their vision, their values are the same as mine, and that allowed me to work with leaders, my leaders that also support me as as a profession, but also because we're not just professionals, we also have our
Yeah.
our personal life. So have that balance. And so for me, deliberately also choosing the organizations that I work with and the leaders that I work with. I know sometimes you can't really choose your leaders because organizations change and all of that, but I always try my best to work with organizations, like I said, that align with the values that I have. And then in my personal life, the family that I have, the support system that I have, my partner, my kids, I think that building that support system at home and in your professional life is so important. not just for women, to be honest, but I think this resonates a lot
Yeah.
more with women, but really any professional, whether
Mm,
you're male or female. I think having that
mm,
support system is so important for you to really, succeed in whatever it is that you want. Because
mm,
we're not, well, what is this? No man is an island, as cliche as it sounds, right?
mm,
We're not
mm,
singular
mm,
individuals. We typically work, we work with people. We have people around us. So for me,
mm.
trying to leverage that support system, that network, that community around you, will help you succeed, because you can't do it alone.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I totally agree because yeah, you do need like a really good support system, and that's what I wanted to like share with the audience that, whenever you're looking to, join a company, or maybe if you're looking for a new role, it's really important to make sure that you're aligned with their goals and values, and you can get that support from them, so that you can grow in your career and gain that self confidence. So yeah, I think that's what one of the factors that really contribute to your growth. So yeah, that's amazing. um and then my next question was that, as a leader, what have been one of your biggest challenges being in a leadership role?
I've The best part of being a leader, again, for me, is like working with my team. And typically, I wouldn't say that it's always easy, um, but I enjoy that part the most. But then also, the ability, because you in a leadership position, you are not just working with people, you're also looking at strategy and all of that. But the hardest part for me has always been managing up, managing upwards, and not because I work with leaders that give me a hard time or anything like that. It's just inherently for me that I um, I like to. I'm a high achiever. I would say I typically don't. And I think the number one, um, how should I say it? The number one, I'm losing the word, but I think that the numbers won't challenge. There you go. Maybe challenge is a bit too much, but just out of lack of word, it's not coming to me. I think that the number one challenge for me is actually asking for help, which is so weird. And I know this is not like one of those cliche answers to what is your weakness and all of that, but really, I realized throughout the years that I struggle asking for help. I don't know, because maybe women in leadership positions always feel like they have a lot more to
Yeah.
prove, and so I typically wouldn't ask for help and try to do everything by myself, and because of that, and that's why I said managing up, because I think that's what your leaders are for. I They're there to support you as well, just like how you as a leader are there to support your team. And I think that's the struggle that I have, not because I have difficult managers. To be honest, I know that
Yeah.
a lot of women actually have some horror stories oftentimes about working in an organization, leaders, and working with specific types of leaders and all of that. I've never had the problem, like, throughout my career. And also, I think that's very fortunate of me throughout my career, is that I've worked with leaders that I really look up to, both male and female, and has shaped how I see leadership today. And my brand of leadership as well is shaped by all of those opportunities to work with great leaders that I really look up to. So that's why when I'm saying managing up, that's more about how do I engage with my leaders so that they are supporting me, so that I'm not overwhelmed with my role, which is really contrary to what I said earlier, that how do you call this, you need to harness the power of community and the organization, their people. But sometimes I do struggle still with that,
Yeah.
and even though I know that that's what I need to do, and you're not alone, and you don't have to do this alone. It's just that inherent, I don't think, I don't know, ingrained in us that, hey, you
Yeah.
have a lot to prove. So, you ask for help. Maybe you put yourself in a vulnerable position where they think that you can do your job. So
Mm,
that's kind of like
mm.
the whole thought process.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
that's really the struggle, and then you can see that it's more an internal struggle. And I
Mm,
know that others, like I said, and I want to acknowledge that as well, there are external struggles to this. But
mm,
again, it's always, and maybe my internal struggle is shaped by all those other people, all those other
yeah.
women's experiences. But
Mm,
kind of like that's the hardest part for me to really
mm,
navigate. And
mm.
I it is a constant, like I said, it's a constant, deliberate, sh- sh- no, it's a constant, deliberate. Um, well,
Struggle
let me,
or
yeah, I guess, okay, yeah, struggle to, or I wanted to say that I have to constantly fight against it. Like I
um,
have to deliberately fight
mm,
against it, because
mm.
it's something that always creeps
Back
back.
in. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's totally, I think, something that every woman would relate with this, because I think, yeah, that's where, like, what you spoke about before about the imposter syndrome comes in, where it's like that feeling, oh, like if I ask for help, that means like other people would think that I don't know what to do, and I don't know, um and then people will see me as like a fraud or something. And so that's where the imposter syndrome comes in. And yeah, I think a lot of women struggle with the same thing, where we don't know how to ask for help. And that's something that I even relate with, because even it's the same with me, where even asking someone for, like, oh, like recommendations or tips or even things like that is a struggle, where I think, like, oh, like, okay, why would that person help me, you know and so, yeah, so that's something that I think a lot of women struggle with. But I think at the end of the day, it's really important to recognize that, that even identifying it, that, okay, yes, this is a problem.
Hmm.
So that you can actually recognize whenever it creeps back in, and then you can work on it. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that's really important. And so my next question would be that, uh, when it comes to your career ambitions, and you being a mother of two, and just your personal life as well, have you faced any kind of, I would say, challenges when it came to, like, expectations from society? Because even I think with women, that is also kind of like something they have to fight against, is
Hmm.
what the society expects of you as a working mother, or maybe even like what the corporate culture expects out of you as a working mother. So
Hmm.
what has your experience been with that?
Okay. I think the struggle has always been about work life balance. And like you said, typically there's a lot more expectations out of women when it comes to that, because at home you're expected to be, to play that figure of taking care of your family and all of that. And then also professionally, you need to show up, you need to be performing and all of that. But I think, like I mentioned earlier, and I guess I don't want to call myself lucky. Maybe it's also part of that um, a deliberate attempt, like I mentioned earlier, of always
Mm,
striving to work with companies that align with my goals. I've
mm,
I First off, it started with me defining what's important for me, to be honest.
mm,
And for me, like
mm,
I said, I will always value my family over anything else. And I think
mm,
knowing that helps me make sure that whatever organizations I go in, I've worked a lot for startups, and people always say that, working in startups is going to be even harder because it's a growing company, and sometimes you have to wear multiple hats and all of that. But the reality is, like I said, the moment that I know what's top priority for me, in everything that I do, I always make sure that it won't conflict with, what I value the most. And like I said, the challenge, especially when I was a first time mother, was before I identified, like, I need to prioritize this. Because when I was a single, I was single, I didn't have kids. It was all about myself, like how do I grow,
Mm,
how to grow professionally. I think typically in that stage of your career, this is where you really want to excel, you really want to move up, or you have your career aspirations of growth. And when I was a first time mother, I struggled a little bit with, how do you balance that? How do you balance the fact that now you have to show up both at home and in your professional life? And
mm,
like I said, and that was before I realized that I need to define what's important for me. And only through that I realized that, okay, I have the power to set the expectations, I have the power to set up the
mm,
boundaries. And I'm lucky enough, as I mentioned, to be working with organizations that respect that. So, for
mm,
example, in today's work, we now have remote work, and I actually love that. And
mm,
I actually thrive in
mm,
that because I have the opportunity to still spend time with my family at home while still working and balancing that. And I we can talk a little bit more about that because that's probably a separate topic altogether, because I can talk about the pros and cons
yeah,
of remote work as well. But
yeah,
for me, I thrive in that, and I take advantage of that, and I'm glad that my organization offers me that opportunity as well. And so,
mm,
like I said, there is that struggle about balancing, about how do you show up with the same amount of energy every day
mm,
at work, 24/7, really,
yeah,
right? Like at work
yeah,
and at home as well. But
yeah,
it really starts with defining what's important to you, and
mm,
and setting the right boundaries. I am
mm,
very open to that. Like even with my team, if for example um, I have to go to a parent teacher conference at school, I would block my calendar and tell my team
mm,
this afternoon. And typically that happens during the weekdays, right? And I would say,
yeah,
I will tell my team I'm very open. Hey guys, I'm not going to be available. And I'll be start gonna check my Slack every once in a while. So if there's something that's urgent, just
mm,
message me.
mm,
But they know where I am, and they know that okay, she might not be unresponsive at this point in time. But and again,
mm,
it's I don't think a lot of organizations allow that. I think we're
mm,
still getting there, but
yeah,
it all starts with deliberately choosing the organizations that I work with, because that's important to
yeah,
me. And so I always kind of put that in the for front and
yeah,
center in a lot of like in my interviews, when I go to job interviews, I
mm,
ask questions specific to that, because I know
mm.
that I want to work at a company that supports my values and supports work life balance, and that's super big for me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the point to note here is that, the thing that you said about, noting down what your priorities are. So in different parts of your life, that's going to change. So, maybe when, you're single, you don't have any children, maybe, you have other priorities. And when you get married or when you have your child, maybe your priorities will change again. So I think that's really important to like be aware of whenever you're looking for opportunities. And then the second point here I also wanted to mention was that I think with organizations right now, it's definitely a challenge where you know we want to show up as equal, and these different types of organizations do want to offer things to their employees. But I think that's where the challenge is, where the organizations do need to recognize that they need to be more equitable, and that means that every employee is gonna you know prioritize things differently. And for every employee, you know, some things will be important, for the other employee it might not be important. So for example, like you said, like for you, it's a priority. It's an amazing thing that you're able to work remotely, and that might not be the same thing for another employee. So um, if an organization puts like that kind of like a mandatory thing for someone, like, oh, okay, you need to come to the office, this is for all employees, I don't think that's gonna work long term, or it's a good thing to apply to the whole organization. So I think in that way, the organizations do need to like start looking things a bit differently at people. So yeah, I think that's something that we definitely need to work on. Um, so um, let's talk a little bit about revenue. So I know that's another topic that is, something that you really talk about. And so um, we touched on this a little bit, but um, I wanted to talk about how you spoke before that, customer success, it directly impacts revenue growth. But how do you think is the best way to communicate that value to other departments
Mhm.
and maybe like leadership or maybe even sales? Because I think that's where a lot of myths you can say, or maybe like misunderstanding is when it comes to customer success, how they view customer success.
Right. The thing is, customer success has always been different in every organization. Like they define customer success differently wherever you go. Um, and it first starts with how do you find customer success in your organization? Now, that could mean in today's evolution of the profession, like I mentioned, and you mentioned as well, is that there is that shift for customer success to have more revenue accountability. And and the thing is, that could be the definition of that. How that looks will differ as well in each organization. For some organization, that could mean that customer success is responsible for renewals. Maybe in some organization, they're both responsible for renewals and also expanding revenue from the existing customers. Or in some organizations, they don't do any of those commercial responsibilities, but they're still expected to, obviously at the end of the day, right, the reason why customer success exists is, again, going back to what I said earlier, like the mission is about helping your customers achieve their goals, be successful within your product and your service, but then also for a company to really drive that revenue, because that is the end goal that organizations
Mm,
on. Like we're not helping customers for free. I mean, as
mm.
let's just really be practical.
Yeah,
Organizations are businesses as well, and this is how
yeah.
they. It's actually a really a great mission. Like this is how you want your organization to grow, by helping your customers solve that problem. Because your product
Mhm,
typically is, you start with that idea of a product, and first a problem you want to address, and then you create the product, and then and then afterwards, that's where customer success come in to deliver that promise of the product and help your customers really succeed and solve that whatever challenge that they're having, right? And so how do you demonstrate the impact? It's easier for those that own revenue, because it's easy to show that, oh, okay, customer success has been able to drive this percent of retention, this amount of revenue dollars from the existing customers. Because in order for it to really resonate with your leadership, with C-suite, you always have to speak their language, and typically that's the language of revenue. And
mm,
how you speak to your CRO, to your CEO, to your CFO, they would understand numbers. So
mm,
as a CS leader, for you to be able to demonstrate your impact, you talk about, like, the revenue and those numbers. um,
mm,
but then, like I said, for those that don't necessarily own the revenue, this is also why I recommend that there's always an element of business metrics that you measure as a CS leader. So that's very easy to tie the value of what your team does to the organization's, how do you helping the organization achieve their goals. So and that can be replicated as well when you talk to sales, when you talk to marketing, when you talk to product. It's all about, and I think everybody should have this mindset, actually, not just customer success. Product teams who
mm,
traditionally don't have any revenue numbers, right? It's
mm,
easier for sales.
mm.
They've always been all about, driving and
Numbers.
bringing in the dollars, right, and the revenue for the organization. That's how that has always been their main charter. But now every organization needs to understand that they contribute to revenue. They may
Mm,
do it differently. They may not be selling to customers, but at the end of the
mm,
day, product, how you design and create your product, right, is so important to that revenue generation. And support, even to make sure that, how you support your customers, if you make your customers happy and satisfied, then that would amount to customers being retained, and that equates to dollars, right? So I think at the end of the day, every organization, even not just customer success, always need to tie it back to revenue goals so that you're able to showcase the impact. Because I think now it's not as impactful when you say, oh, this, of course you still would appreciate it when you say somebody, when a customer provides positive feedback about your product, right? Because you want to showcase that, okay, you were able to make a customer happy, success stories from customers, right? That's also all important. But at the end of the day, to really showcase impact, you need to go beyond like all of those and really tie it back to the numbers and tie it back to how you're helping the company grow.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely agree. Um, and then when it comes to, the need for revenue growth, how do you balance that with, also the need for customer retention?
That's true. It's a good question. And I think that's what a lot of customer success leaders that I coach and work with struggle with. Like, how do you ensure that your customers are renewing with you, are happy with your product and service, or achieving their goals, while at the same time driving that? I really do believe that there is, and this is also based on my experience, right? There is a framework that allows you and your team to continuously deliver those revenue while still maintaining to what I said earlier is really the core mission and charter of customer success. It's about the customers, right? It's about helping them succeed. And really, especially when we talk about revenue or growth in the context of customer success, yes, it's sales. It At the end of the day, it's sales. You need to sell, but you do it differently. It's all about orchestrating that customer journey that allows them to see value in your product and service, which eventually makes them realize that, okay, well, this is a great company to work with. I want to renew my subscription, or maybe I want to expand my subscription with them because I'm seeing value and I am happy with the service that they're providing. I'm happy with the engagement with the people that work with me in my organization. So I think that it shouldn't be one or the other. If you orchestrate that customer journey, expansion and renewal is a non-event. Like, it just will happen because you're making sure that your customers are successful. But it's very easy to say, right? Like, in theory, it's so, yeah, of course, you just have to make your customer happy and love your product and be advocates for you. That has always been like the mission of customer success from the very beginning, when we created, the industry has been created. But like I
Mm,
said, typically, um, what CS leaders struggle is having that framework. What is the operating model to ensure that you're doing that? It's a repeatable, scalable process that your team can and execute, and that's your job as a CS leader. That is their job, or your job, to really orchestrate that. So, yep, I hope that helps a little bit, like, well,
yeah.
what I think about it. Like you said, I can talk on and on about this, but yes, that's a good starting point.
Yeah, yeah, no, that absolutely answers the question. Um, and then my next question was, were are there any other challenges that you came across when you were talking to other CS leaders when you were coaching them? Besides this challenge, is there any other challenge that keeps coming up?
Right. It's actually, I've told there's a lot of challenges that comes with like
Yeah.
this I wouldn't say probably transition, because it really has to be a deliberate change in mindset and strategy if you want your customer success team to drive revenue. I can say that, yes, if you do your core mission and you're making sure that the customers are adopting the product, they're happy with the product, successful with the product, that the dollars just gonna get start to rain. But like I said, there is a deliberate framework, there is an operating model that you as a CS leader must go through to do this. Some of the struggles that I frequently hear is about the skill set, because when you are a CSM that needs to drive revenue, you have revenue goals on top of like that system, that framework. You also have to have the skills to execute. In a lot of cases, the CS leaders that I work with, they say they come from like the traditional customer success, and I'm using that as a lack of term for
Mm.
it, like the customer success that's focused on just like engagement with the customer and adoption
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
outcomes, and now they have to own this revenue and they have to sell. So typically the skill set is what is lacking. But the reality is, good customer success managers already have the traits that will help them be successful in a role that drives revenue. A lot of the good customer success managers needs to be able to um, have good discovery capability, the ability to ask the right questions, discover
Mm.
more about the customer, the ability to drive value within their accounts, the ability to build relationships. Because if you take away all of these labels, like even selling is all about building a relationship, making sure that the customer sees the value in your product, and even in pre-sales, like what we know of sales, bringing in those new accounts or new logos into the organization, it's more or less the same skill set, right? You need to showcase that your product has value, that it addresses their need. You need to build relationships with the people that you're selling to. Those are things that customer success managers already typically do on a day-to-day. Like I said, it's just, and like at the end of the day, that's why sometimes it's just about a strategy shift and a mindset
Mm.
shift, and a
Mm.
culture, like a culture shift of, this is
Mm.
now what we need to drive. And that's typically the challenge that I see a lot of leaders and CSMs do. First, like the skill set, they feel like there is a gap in the skill set, and maybe in a lot of cases it's going to be correct, right? And so that
Mm.
can be addressed easily. And
Yeah.
also that shift, that it's a
Mm.
it's a mindset shift as well, and it's a strategy shift. And like, where do I start is typically like the problems and the challenge that they run into.
Um, and then, um, what would be your advice to, other people who are aspiring to, reach leadership roles in their
Mhm.
career path, whether it's customer success, or even something else? But, is there any specific advice that you would
Yeah,
like to give them?
very great question. It starts with self introspection. What do you really want to get out of your career? Because I've worked with individual contributors as a leader. I've worked, and it's mind boggling to me at the beginning. Some I've worked with people who doesn't want to be people leaders, who doesn't want to manage people, and they want to stay in this individual contributor track and just want to be experts in what they do without having to manage people, and that's fine
Mm.
as well. So I think, like I mentioned, it starts with understanding really internally within you, what do you want, what is it that will help you thrive, and then being very deliberate with what the next steps that you take to get there. And honestly, for especially for younger professionals, it's okay to experiment at the beginning. Actually, for me, it helped me a lot to experiment, and not to, how should I say, box myself into one role. And
Mm.
experimenting allowed me to actually acquire a lot of skills and a different mindset that help shape me as a professional today as well. As a CS leader, I brought with me my support background, my background in operations. I am very data driven because I did a lot of that in operations, looking at data. So I really bought a lot of what I learned. Like, it's not going to be lost. All the skill set that you learn, even if you're jumping from different roles, you're going to carry that, and that's going to really help you grow. And so, and also it actually helped. me understand what I wanted to do in my life. Like I said earlier, that pivotal moment as well, where, and from then on, the moment that I knew this is what I wanted to do, it's I always I went down that path. So self introspection, understanding where you want to be. Um, don't be afraid to experiment and learn new things. It will help you grow no matter what. And then at, and then like I said, that I always use this word deliberate, because it doesn't just happen. It's not like
Mm,
my career, and it maybe for some people it did, but for me it was really an approach where, okay, I want to do this. Uh, this is the path that I want to take. And because I identified that, a lot of the things that I do, the learning that I did, is all about making sure that I'm able to successfully cross that path and
mm,
having a growth mindset. And I know that everybody says that, but it's really super important. It's the reason why everybody says having a growth mindset is important. For me, a growth mindset is your approach to learning is all about growing. I oh, I took a lot of, like, especially in the early part of my career, I taught I took courses to help me learn new skills. I work with
mm,
mentors. I work with I work with mentor. I harness that the community around me as well to help
mm,
me with my goals and my career
mm.
goals. So like I said, don't be afraid to experiment, learn new things, and then be very deliberate with your career growth and learning. And that, like I said, it involves understanding. It involves just like I mentioned.
Like a lot of self
Yeah.
introspection and, a
Yes.
lot of like
I,
asking yourself
yes,
a lot of
exactly, exactly. I wanted to say that, and for whatever reason, I am jumbling my words. But yes, like introspection, and but then also taking action. Like it's not just always self introspection. Like deliberately taking
questions.
action. And taking action means, you know, being intentional with the way that you grow, with how you acquire new skills, even in your own role right now, being more proactive and finding opportunities for you to learn and to grow, and harnessing your leaders,
Mm.
to coach you or to mentor you, to help you acquire the skills that you need to get you there. There you go.
Amazing. No, that was really amazing, and I think a lot of people will resonate with that, and definitely get a lot of benefit from that advice. Um, do you want to talk a little bit about CS Rev Speak? Just
Oh,
tell the audience a little bit about that as well.
okay, thank you. Well, yes, as I mentioned, I also coach and work with customer success leaders who own a revenue number, because of the challenges I mentioned earlier. And so CS Rev Speak was created because I myself was in that position a few years ago when I was put into a role where I need to drive revenue. And when I joined that organization, I was already a customer success leader for years. And even then I didn't know. I didn't know what are the right frameworks that I need to set up. How do I
Mm,
update, or how do I set up a strategy that allows us to continuously and repeatably scale our growth? So I created CS RevSpeak to be able to help all those customer success leaders that have been in the same situation as I am, because I realized that there's not a lot of resources out there that speak specifically to how can customer success drive revenue growth. And I mean, there's no shortage actually of customer success resources out there, podcasts, blogs, newsletters, and all of that. But specifically talking about how to help leaders drive revenue growth within CS, and that's why that was kind of like my target, because I also experienced that.
mm,
I myself were like looking for a coach, a mentor, or just
mm,
resources around it, and it was very difficult to
mm.
find. So that's kind of the mission that I have. I want to help all these customer success. Sorry, I want to help these customer success leaders and build their teams and their strategy to help them drive that. So if anybody's interested, and hope this is a shameless plug, go to csrevspeak.com and to learn more about me, or really just connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to you know talk, or talk like
Mm.
this, like what we're doing right now with Priya. Talk about customer success. Ask me any questions. I always like to network and connect with all customer success professionals.
Amazing. And I think that's where I'll also add the asking for help comes in.
Right.
Because even, as leaders, sometimes, as you share your own experience where, people struggle with asking for help because they're like, I'm a leader, I should know this. But the truth is that nobody knows everything. You're not an expert. It's okay to ask for help from others. So,
That's true.
yeah, that's where this comes in. So yeah, amazing work that you're doing with RevSpeak. And then my last question that I usually end with is, say 5 things about yourself that you're proud of.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. There's a lot of things that I'm proud of. Okay, I think
Mm.
number one, I'm a mother to two adorable kids, ages 12 and 3. So like the age gap allows me to, again, I like that excitement in my life, right? So
Yeah.
like having almost
Mm.
an almost teen and a
Mm.
toddler, as if I don't have
Mm.
enough
Yeah.
challenges already. Like that's number one. I am I am a partner to a really incredible and outstanding human being. So he has been one of my greatest support system, and I really am always proud of that, because like I told you
Mm.
earlier, like the systems and support systems that I have around me are what's really helped me arrive at
Mm.
where I am today. So yeah, that's
Mm.
Anthony is my is my partner, and then my kids are Cyrus and Lana. Okay, there we go. So that's two.
Amazing.
3, I am really proud of, I think everything that I spoke with today, like the trajectory of my career. I am
Mm.
incredibly proud of what I have achieved so far, of
Mm.
where I got today,
Mm.
leading a team at Catalan. That's one thing, because I really think that it's a very hard should I say, it's a very hard road to travel for a lot of
Mm.
women professionals, right? To grow in their
Mm.
career and be in a leadership role. And I want to acknowledge that. And I'm proud of what I have been able to achieve today as a professional. Um, I'm proud, and thank you for allowing me to also plug that into your podcast. By what I'm doing right now, CS Rev Speak, I I think that in the long term, like I mentioned earlier, I went into customer success because I like to work with people. I like to help people, and
Mm.
this is again another flavor of how I'm helping people,
Mm.
especially people that I resonate with because I was in the same journey as them. Number 4, number 5. What am I proud of? What else? I I think I'm proud of the um, the mindset that I've cultivated in myself.
Mm.
Like I said, all of those 4 things I have been able to achieve because I believe that I've always looked at the positive side of things, and that
Mm.
mindset is so important in growing and moving
Mm.
into going into anything like building a business, becoming a leader, having a family,
Mm.
right? And I think that
Mm.
mindset of is so important for anybody else, whether you're a leader or not, whether you're a business owner or
Yeah.
not, whether you're single or you have a family. I think that's super important
Mm.
to always look at the side of things,
Mm.
and you could tell as well, right? With I do a lot of self introspection, so I think that's so important for me to understand that always look at the positive side of things. There's always a different angle to look at, and
Mm.
if why not just look at the positive side rather than focusing on like the negative, because I feel like that's really where you're gonna have find opportunities as well. There you go.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I think having that mindset is, that's where, it's ultimately gonna lead you down, like, success, whatever that means for you. and having that like learners and growth mindset that you talked
Mhm.
about is, what that's where that comes in. So yeah, that's really amazing. And I think, yeah, so that's where we basically end this podcast. It was, obviously amazing talking to you and chatting to you about, different things from customer success to revenue to women's issues. But, this was very helpful and, I would say full of information and knowledge for our audience. And I hope they take that with them, and obviously to the audience, if you're really interested in what um, Angeline is doing with RevSpeak, obviously you can reach out to her on LinkedIn. And if you like the episode, please go subscribe, like, uh, and we will continue doing these episodes. I post every 2 weeks. So I will see you on the next episode. And thank you, Angeline.
Thank you so much.